being crisp and light, cool in the morning, even during the summer. Sweat was already dotting on my forehead as I made my way up the narrow sidewalk toward the house. There were flowers decorating the front of the porch. Although, as perfect as the gingerbread house was, the grass needed to be cut. I stood outside of the door for a long minute, debating as I pulled at a lock of my thick hair. I obviously had to knock, but would she be mad it was so early in the morning? Maybe she'd acquired dementia in the year since I'd last talked to her, and she wouldn't even recognize me as her granddaughter at all. Maybe I should just hop back in my car and take my ass back to Denver. But the thought of spending another day there made me immediately push the thought away. I'd sleep in my car before I went back to my so-called life there. Before I could even adequately finish the last thought, the door swung open and my grandma stood before me, a knowing smile on her lips. Her eyes were bright and alert as if she'd been up for hours. "I thought I heard somebody fiddling around the porch," she said, talking through her smile. Her voice was husky and mellow, and there wasn't a trace of surprise in her eyes. "I was about to knock," I started, wondering what exactly she could have heard. The only noise I'd been making was inside of my head. Her gaze skirted over my shoulder to my old red Trans Am, which definitely needed a bath, before she looked at me again. She stared at me for a brief second before opening the door wider and ushering me inside of her gingerbread house, which even smelled like cinnamon. I stood inside of the entranceway, shifting my weight, feeling awkward and drained, and kind of like I wanted to cry. This was probably a bad idea. My grandma had moved into this house 3 years ago, and in that entire time, I'd never once stepped foot inside. She shut the door behind me and then stood in front of me, still smiling although her gaze was assessing. Pepper James wasn't a big woman, not petite, but fit. She was 72 and looked to be in her early 60s. She was wearing a pink and gray striped t-shirt and a pair of jeans that looked like they were mostly used for gardening. Her hair was twisted into a single braid that hung to the middle of her shoulders and showcased her high cheekbones that came courtesy of the Cherokee blood that ran through my dad's side of the family. Most Black people like to claim that they had some Indian in them, as if being something other than fully Black was a thing to wish for. But in my grandma's case, it was true. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but my dad had said that his family was originally from Missouri, by way of Tennessee, and in the Midwest especially, finding Blacks with a bit of indigenous blood in them was fairly common. "How was your drive?" Pepper asked, as if it was absolutely normal for her half-estranged, fully disheveled, probably unstable granddaughter to show up unexpectedly on her doorstep at the ass crack of dawn. I didn't know how to say the drive had been desperate, fueled by memories I was trying to outrun and the fear of creating new ones, so I lied. "It was nice." She eyed me. "I-70 is a lot of things, Bean, but nice isn't one of them." She laughed from deep in her belly, and I offered a wan smile. That was one of the things I remembered liking about her. She called me Bean, and her laughter always sounded as if it was just on the tip of her tongue. It made me feel warm inside. Being around Pepper had always reminded me of eating French toast on Sunday morning. Even in the midst of the chaos that was currently my life, that feeling hadn't changed. It was long, I finally admitted, settling on a half-truth, and desperately ugly, especially that stretch between Denver and Wichita. She seemed to like that answer better because she nodded and smiled again. "Nothing but dirt for hundreds of miles. Sky, dirt, and your thoughts. You really